Disclaimer: the hosts of this podcast, Timothy Patrick and Will Foley, are by no means medical professionals. However, having lived experience with mental illness themselves, they have gained useful perspectives on common mental health issues that some of us struggle to overcome on a daily basis. By sharing their stories, they hope to create connection. By creating connection, they hope to help you find your purpose. And through purpose, we can all begin to build the foundation for positive mental health. This is Above Ground Podcast.
Coming at you live with real conversations about mental health from the perspective. It's time for Above Ground Podcast. Now your hosts, TPP and Will Foley.
Hey, what is up, everyone? Welcome to Above Ground Podcast.
Above Ground Podcast, because you can't serve below.
No, you cannot. What's up, TPP? What's going on, bud?
The usual, the dailies.
Oh, the dailies aren't that bad, though, all the time.
Not all the time, but when they compile onto each other and then mix a little of your own cognitive distortions on top of it, it becomes a little heavy.
Oh, yeah, that's a wicked soup to get out from under.
It is.
This morning, we're joined by Joni of Operation at Ease. And Operation at Ease is a local Nippertown 518 501c3 that, takes dogs from shelters and pairs them with deserving vets and first responders and provides free guided training programs for post-traumatic stress and light mobility service dogs. Wow. Now that's giving back. So, Joni, thank you very much for joining us this morning. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome.
So why don't you just jump in and just kind of tell us how you got this started or why you got this started and we'll go from there.
Sure. So Operation Eddie started a little over 8 years ago because there were no resources for service dogs in the Capital District and really even in connecting communities for we started initially for veterans exclusively and then added on first responders a couple of years later, but the resources didn't exist. So as I was trying to help a friend of mine find a service dog, and was a 4-time combat veteran, 21 years in the Army, and I was met by red tape, roadblocks, politics, huge price tags, and it just got me upset. I'd worked in the shelter and rescue community training dogs for a long time, and so there's not a lack of dogs and there's not a lack of people who need them, so why are we not doing better? And so that's how it started. We took off pretty quick and have been going strong since.
Well, first, thank you for the work that you do helping save dogs. As we know, a lot of people have surrendered their animals now back to shelters because, they had to solve their personal needs by getting an animal during COVID and then not realizing the personal responsibility or taking the responsibility for it. So now, but at least we have a place like yours that can take service, that can provide something of strength and connection to people who really need it and provide animals with another chance.
Right. Yeah. Just one thing I always felt like was missing, and it's not through any fault of, shelters always. I've worked in several throughout the country, they're all doing the best they can and you can only do so much, but one thing that was always kind of lacking was behavioral support and, long-term behavioral support post-placement. So we're able to do that as well. And that was always, a dual mission of making sure that the people who serve us have what they need, and that, we're able to keep dogs in homes. So it's been very rewarding.
So did you train dogs before you started this?
So it's all I've done. I've never done anything else. Like I can never decide if that's like a good story because like so many people have like all these stories about all the stuff they've done.
That's
So
but
I
that's
started
beautiful.
because,
That's beautiful though. You've dedicated your life to serving something that really cannot serve itself.
yeah.
But on multiple levels, like Will said, you're serving the animal, you're serving the person, and I'm sure you can probably attest you're serving yourself in some ways.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I
Yeah.
wouldn't, I just think you do what you love, and if it's not fun anymore, then you stop, So, because I don't have the temperament to be frustrated. So,
So
I'm not
how
that kind of girl. So,
I have a question because
sure.
I mean maybe some dogs at the shelter are all of them capable of, I guess, rehabbing and turning into these support dogs.
Well, that's a great question. So, what I always start with the person, because the dog I pick for you might be different than the dog I pick for Will, might be different. What do you want? What are your personal goals? What's your lifestyle look like now? Like, do you work in an office for 10 hours a day and I need a dog that's going to like hunker under the desk with you? Or are you working from home or retired and you like to go running and you want to start hiking again and you have small children and like what's your life look like? And then we go into the shelter and we always go by what their initial assessment was. So what does the shelter know about this dog? What have they seen so far about this dog? And then it's really kind of from there, it can be kind of crazy. Like you have to go in with the right mindset. Like I always say, I go in like I'm picking out a loaf of bread because I'm not going to take everyone I see, and I can't. And it is heartbreaking when you're an animal lover, to know that you have to look at someone and tell them, no, today's not your day, And, I will walk up and down the kennels. I recently had interns from SUNY Cobleskill that came with me, and they said it was harder than they thought just because I was so, yes, no, no, yeah, like walking through. But, I'm looking for someone who kind of, I don't know. So I've done this 25 years. So I kind of just want a certain look in their face, if that makes sense. Like, and then you want someone who doesn't really care that they live there because it shows they're adaptable. And I want someone who recognizes the shelter staff as, so they're able to bond and form a relationship in a high stress environment. From there, we take the dog out, we work with the dog at the shelter for a little bit. We drive it in the car for at least 45 minutes to an hour because car sick service dogs are not a good look. And then we go out in public for, it's like about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and we introduce the dog, to as many different noises, sounds, smells. We like to go to hardware stores because we like these dogs to meet men and men in hats and men with beards. Dogs have problems with men and children way before they'll have problems with females. So, and then we kind of go from there. But every dog we place is rough and raw. And we're just, grateful that we work with a community of people that is filled with grit and they can handle it. So then the dog goes home.
That is so cool, man. That is such a beautiful story and such a beautiful way to connect so many things on so many levels that I don't have many words to go through to add to that. So I got to ask you, what is it that you saw that made you specific to because there's other things that we could really benefit from this. Is there a lack of resources for vets because of the red tape, or is it so many, or is it just on so many levels?
I just think it's politics. I like, sometimes I look at our veterans and it feels like a Hunger Games scenario, like, I don't know. I don't want to get political. I just don't understand how we can't do better. Like how we are not just discharging people from the military, and upon discharge, MRIing their brain for TBIs. I was speaking with one of my veterans a couple of weeks ago. Her husband is a combat veteran and was just diagnosed with a traumatic brain injury, and he's deployed 20 years ago. So why is it not? I just don't. And then the red tape now for the Pause Act for groups like mine to get certified through the VA, for the VA to pay for these dogs, is just another layer. I don't know. I think I hate to say it because I hate to sound like I'm part of a conspiracy theory group, but I just think there's always a certain benefit, because people need to be needed, and we need the government, and we need the VA. So I hate to say that. And then, as we get into the first responder community, it's like, this is just untapped. Like, why are we not? There's nothing.
Well, I think part of it is too, is that we have to remember too, that these are just other segments of the world. Like, again, these are professions that people choose to go into, and we come from all different backgrounds in these professions.
Yes.
So again, it's just a microcosm. It's a macro of the micro, or the micro of the macro, where it's just, now you're in your particular world. So now you see what everybody else sees, because what you're seeing is what's going on everywhere in mental health, everywhere, no matter who it's for. And unfortunately, there's a certain other level when it comes to veterans. You sign up to do a job, but at the end of that, you expect to have a certain level of care and a certain level of being treated with dignity. And I do a little bit of work with veterans. I have one veteran client that I've worked with who, I don't know all of his story, but I will never understand it because I've never seen that. But it's
I think there's a lot of, so like my first apartment, I moved out of my parents' house onto Fort Bragg. My ex-husband was in the Army. So these are just two, I've always known dogs, and I've always known the military community. Even my second husband's in the Air Force. So I have a type. So I'm here to admit it. But it's, and they, like, people always would say, oh, they knew what they were getting into, and you knew as a spouse what you were getting into, but you have no idea what you're getting into. Like, it's like just a completely different dimension to the world. Like some people are late for work because it's like garbage day, and I was late for work because I got stuck behind a convoy of tanks, or 65 people in full combat gear and guns would jump out in front of my car. And I remember that happening, stopping because all these guys in full combat gear, guns, camo, rucksacks, jumped out of the wood line, ran in front of my car to jump back in the wood line. And I thought, Jesus, I'm going to be late. And then I thought, Jesus, when did this become my normal? When was I not, when did that not shock me anymore, that people are running around with guns, but and as we get into work with first responders now, so last year, because we were the recipients of the Pig Bowl, which is coming up in October, and that's a lot of fun, right? But that's been just another rabbit hole of, why are we not helping these people? We run entire fire departments on volunteer basis, which means if that person or those people don't show up, what happens? Do you know what I mean? And why are we not giving them the same benefits or support or consideration? So we've from there branched out to create a therapy dog program, but we only visit veterans groups or first responders. We don't do schools and hospitals, because we feel like I'm tired of these people being on waiting lists for things, so if you need us, we're just going to make sure we show up with what we have for you.
Perfectly said. Yeah, the whole waiting list thing for me is super annoying. It's like, and I think it will happen in general to all of us eventually, if we do this whole free healthcare or universal healthcare. It's like, it's a good idea, but you're talking, months out, years out. And if somebody's sick and needs help, you know what I mean? The clock is ticking. You can't just take somebody that, has a TBI or is suicidal and say, hey, you know what? In 4 months, you can see this person. You just can't do it. You just can't do it. I don't know the boundaries, and I know there are some, but like you said before, we have to do better.
There's just everything about our country is screaming out that we need mental health support. And I don't know why everyone's ears are covered. Like there's so many, tragedy. Like my kids' high school created a no cell phone policy this year. And if they're caught on their phone, the school's going to take it and put it up at the desk, like in the office. And all I thought was, unless you can guarantee me with a 350% certainty that my child will not be locked down because of a gun threat or a bomb threat, there's no planet where you're taking my child's cell phone. And it's not that I don't think my kids should be on their phones in school, because they shouldn't be. And it's not that I don't support teachers and the school district, because I do. I would be a fantastic teacher till about October 17th. And then my threshold would close, right? But we have a school shooting problem, and I need to have access to my children. So, and again, that all roots back to, where's our mental health support just for people? Why are we waiting to give people help? Why are we judging who needs more help or who doesn't? It's like, I feel like mental health crisis is like being a pregnant teenager. And if you're a pregnant teenage girl, you don't get benefits unless you know someone who knew someone who can send you to the right place. And we do the same thing with veterans. And we do the same, and it's even worse with first responders, because that's in its infancy, talking about the fact that maybe first responders have experienced traumatic events, and even more gnarly, right? Because like your day is cardiac arrest, suicide attempt, Starbucks drive-through, picking your kid up from soccer, car accident, fatal car accident, go back home for your kid's school play. Like bananas. That's a bananas day, and that's their day. And it's constant mental transition from one to the other, to the other, to the other. And then so it's not only like, why do we not provide support for that person, but where's the support for their family? Because that's a family condition.
That's what I was just going to say, because even for you being the wife of somebody, in the military, that you experience it like maybe secondhand, but you're still experiencing it. And like you said, everybody's different. So, your little T could be a big T for you. You know what I mean? Like my little T could be a big T for you, or my big T may not be anything for you, but we still have to offer some kind of support. I like to think that most people just don't know better. I know it might be a cop out, but I think that we're learning more and more about mental health, and a lot of people are paying attention to it maybe because they think it's cool and it's a trend. But I do think that more research and more education is coming out.
Well, it's a double-edged sword, right? Because there is social contagion, right? And I'm glad I wasn't a teenager with the internet. And I love the internet and I definitely utilize it. But if I had to every day connect with the entire world and hear everybody's, like you are what you follow, and when you're a kid, you don't identify as being a kid because you got it on lock. You know what I mean? By 15, you got life on lock, so that's the first problem. But you're able to log on and find all of these people that relate to you. And I think there's some good and some bad for that, because we need a healthy mix of, yes, I feel that way too, but you can still do things. So the internet's such a double-edged sword, because it allows us to provide venues like this, right? Where we are speaking candidly and able to reach people. But on the same token, I can just Google a board all about depression and go down everyone's rabbit hole with them, so you have to be able to develop the self-awareness to be able to find those safe places. And we don't give people the venue to do that, to be self-aware, so.
Right. Well, we don't teach any of that stuff, So if you don't know to be self-aware, if you don't know how to be self-aware, you're not going to be,
Right. And it's always
Yeah.
the generation before you talking about how we did it different. So you're just.
So you had mentioned about the dogs not going into school and stuff. Do you ever work with kids with disabilities or anything like that?
Nope.
Or is it, yeah, okay.
Nope, that's not our jam. That's not like I think everybody should have access to the things that they need. And I don't think anybody should determine for you what that thing is.
Nice.
If you need it, you should have it. And if you're a child and you need a dog, you should have one. My specialty is with this particular.
Yeah,
type.
no, I was just asking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
because I could cast a huge net, but then I think it would water down who I help because I can only do so much.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So we do veterans. We're banging down the doors of first responders. Tough group of people.
Yeah, we have lots of friends and lots of people we've had on here that are first responders. So we've heard some stories that are just you wouldn't believe unless you heard them.
Yeah, I will say that to work with us, we do require for the service dog program that you be in talk therapy because our program's hard. We're not therapists, we're dog trainers. So we stay in our lane, and you need to have, if you haven't been to the airport since you came home from Iraq, I'm taking you to the airport with your dog and you need somebody to talk about that with, So we do require that you're in talk therapy to attend our program for something that in depth, but we do have drop-in classes for the first responder community. So if you already have a dog in the home and you just want to go to dog training and turn your brain off for an hour, we don't charge for that. You can just sign up and come.
That's great to know. I actually have had the fortunate circumstance of being able to speak to a bunch of police officers in Albany County because I work for the state, and I'm fortunate enough to be connected to crisis intervention training because I know the person who runs it, and I spoke with a bunch of senior officers as far as like more than probably 4 or 5 years experience from all of the counties operations. Every one of them was represented, including the state. I don't know if we had I don't know if we had any military police there or not. But they were very receptive to hearing and talking about mental health. But I could clearly tell I touched a nerve with several of them when I said that the biggest problem is that we don't take care of our own problems, and we need to find ways to deal with that. So your resource for first responders is great, and I will make sure that I start sharing that resource if that's okay with
please.
the people that I come in contact with.
Yeah, just come. And the other thing we're doing is working with the local police department, and we're going to go to them. You feel more comfortable in your firehouse? Well, bring your dogs to your firehouse. What do we care? Just turn your head off for an hour, connect with somebody who, the beautiful thing about dogs is they don't care if you're pretty. They don't care if you're, they're going to love you anyway, so they just, you show up for them and they show up for you, and they're resilient and they're forgiving and they don't have an opinion on what you've been through, and they're not going to tell you how to do it. They don't have any expectations. Like I always say, like we require therapy because one, your story is yours. I never ask what it is. You do not have to tell me. There is no box where you explain why you need a service dog. You just need one. That's it. As long as you have the right credentials and you're in therapy, come on down. You don't have to talk about it with us. If you think it'll help, you can, but you don't ever have to tell me. Your dog doesn't want to hear your story either, but the difference between me and your dog is I have expectations. I do, because If you're not doing the work, there's someone behind you in line waiting to get into our program who's willing to do the work. So I have accountability. I have expectations. Your dog is none. I might be a good person, but your dog is a way better person for you than I am. So like connect with your dog, just turn your brain off and just do it. So that's when we came up with the first responder drop-in classes. Your schedules, how are you going to commit to my service dog program where I need you there once a week, every week for up to a year? You can't. It's not realistic. So, and while you're still active, just show up.
Now I might be ignorant to some of this stuff, but this kind of like a multi-level question. Is there certain dogs that are a better fit for being a service dog, or is it all in the training? Is some of it kind of natural for what sparked this is I recently saw a video on Instagram, and it was this dog could actually this person was experienced syncope, and this dog knew, like, literally probably 50 seconds before the human felt like they were going to pass out. The dog smelled, so I don't know if they smelled something. I don't know this. So if you can kind of explain maybe some of that, it would be great.
Well, there's definitely dogs, like what I have found, because we don't specifically teach nightmare wake up just because we don't have the room in our facility to like simulate like a bedroom, or we wouldn't have it. We just have one big room, and we
What
don't
is that? What is the nightmare wake up? Can you just give us a
so
quick
people will have like night terrors, and dogs wake them up in the middle of them to get them out of it. Yeah. So I mean,
so there's training specific for the dog to recognize that when you're sleeping, that you're having a nightmare.
So it's just cueing the dog to your behavior, right?
Okay,
so like
yeah.
You're having a night terror, you're thrashing, you're shaking, you're moaning in your sleep, and it's just cueing the dog. It's no different than anything else we train. Like we could train it if we had a bigger facility, because we need a separate room for that, because it's like, to me, it just is like a vulnerable, you're laying in a bed and you're thrashing around with me, you and your dog, I wouldn't do that without providing somebody the privacy to like really give it their all, but
plus it's hard to simulate sleeping.
It's hard to simulate sleeping. Yeah. But you just don't want to act like that in a group. You just don't.
Right. Right. People get self-conscious, especially.
Yes. And you have to be ready to be a little vulnerable. But, we teach a lot of behavior interruption. Like we had a veteran in our program who would pull her hair out and wouldn't realize she was pulling her hair out until the disassociation stopped. And the VA provided her with other avenues like putty and Play-Doh, but you don't know, like that's an OCD, like trance, but we just trained her dog. So when she would reach for her hair, he would whack her arm. And, we had another veteran who would rub his arm when he would get anxious. And eventually it would lead to him scratching himself and bleeding. And his dog was trained to just nudge her head up and knock his hand out of the way. So nightmare wake up is just similar to that. What does it look like when you sleep? And then the dog interrupts it. But what we have found is when because our training's all relationship focused. We don't do choke chains, prong collars, we don't ever touch our dogs unless we're petting them or using them for deep pressure. One is we're building a relationship, and that relationship's not going to work unless you both trust each other. You don't trust a person who you feel like has an upper hand over you, no matter what species you are. And everybody we work with has seen enough bad stuff. So we're not bringing bad stuff into their life anymore. This is just about throwing your dog some pepperoni and having a good time and, really, really kind of grounding each other. So, but what we found is that our dogs innately start doing that. They start waking people up from their nightmares. They start interrupting when they're disassociating, because that relationship is just strong enough to know. It's like if you're married and your spouse has nightmares, you don't let them sleep through it. You wake them up, but we teach the dog, the dog just kind of starts taking that role on.
Gotcha. So it does sound like it's a lot in the training, but there's a level to it that I didn't really understand fully until you just said that. It's like you said, it's a relationship. It's a connection. So once you form that bond, like they're going to be there. Yeah. So wow. That's amazing
Training
work
has
you do.
really shifted a lot. What I like about dog training is that it's always evolving. It's always like what it was like when I first started training and I moved here. I was one of the few positive reinforcement trainers. There wasn't a ton of us. And now it's like, I don't want to say we're a dime a dozen, but it's so nice to see. And it's nice to see what we call crossover trainers, like trainers that were previously using choke chains and prongs, now just finding better, nicer ways. There's 100 different ways to raise a kid and train a dog, but if we can always choose it just by being nicer to them, even selfishly, it keeps your blood pressure down. Do it for yourself. Even if you don't care about being nice to your kids, like do it for yourself, like maybe your kids suck, but just be nice to you, but I will say, and I have to give a shout out to this. 100% pit bulls are my favorite breed for service dog work. Any day of the week.
I was trying to save that for a little bit, but I'm glad that you said that, because I was going to ask you about the whole breed contention thing about it.
Yeah.
Because now I'll save that for the end because we're coming up on this. Timmy, do you have anything else to add before we ask the big 3 questions?
Maybe just if there is any first responders, veterans listening, is there anything that you would like to say? If they go to the website, can they find out where these classes are? And
go to the website. We just had our website completely redone, so it's super user friendly. But really, what I have to say is have a conversation with us. Like, even if you think this isn't going to work for you or it's not the right program for you, at least have a conversation with us. So, because all we're going to give you is information, even if it's just the information to say, no, this won't work. Get the information. Hear what we, because, we're here and we're here to help and we're here for you. And it's very difficult to reach people in the helping profession to get help. But it's just our turn to help you now. Like, let us help you.
Will likes that one.
Like, now cue in Circle of Life song from Lion King.
Cue in.
I love it. That's great.
Yeah, have the conversation. That's all I want.
That's nice. And that's what we're all about. This is all about. It's all about the conversation and the connection, man.
Even if the answer is no, at least you have the information to be like, you know what, I talked to them and that's not the right program for me. But you have the information to pass on to someone else.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you can find out all that information at www.operationatease.org. Yes. Correct? Yes. Okay. Because I was on the website this morning.
Okay.
The mobile it's beautiful. It's nice. It's great. It's easy to navigate. Please go there if you have any questions or want information. I'm going to share all that in the show notes. We are wrapping up. Timmy, it's time for the big 3. So why don't you take it away, my friend?
Geez, I kind of wasn't thinking about this question at first, but are you more a dog person, or is it just all animals?
Oh, I'm all animals. Yeah. I mean, okay. I stopped eating meat when I was 12 because and then I went fully plant-based, like, maybe about 7 years ago. I stopped dairy completely. So I'm all animals. I don't want that to make me scary for people, because I think everybody should do what they want. Like, I'm a firm believer in you making the right choice for you. But for me, it really helps me connect with dogs more if I just know in general I'm, keeps my energy good to not participate in that. But no, all animals. But dogs and cats, were always my jam. They're just the easiest to get in touch with. And I'm from Boston. So like while I have no fear in riding the subway at night, like horses kind of always freaked me out a little. Like anything like farm animal I find to be a little scary, but
they're big too. When you're next to a horse, you know, you don't realize it, but when you're next to those are massive. They're just their energy. I don't know. We did we had someone on from a place that's up in Saratoga. They do like therapy with
yeah,
horses and stuff,
yeah,
and it's like, so you're standing there looking at that horse, it looks right through you.
yeah,
It's yeah, I get what you're saying, but
yeah,
it does work. You know, the equine therapy. I know we have had plenty of first responders, and one of them utilized that, and it did help him.
yeah, yeah. I think do it. Animals just have so much to give us. Just, take it.
We find that any therapy that doesn't actually look like therapy is the best therapy.
Yes.
I have the second question, and this came up as you were talking, because I'm interested to know, as you work in shelters, if you've heard about the crisis in veterinarian suicides, because veterinarian suicides are through the roof, and they are one of the biggest groups of suicides. And I was just wondering if that has come up in any of your circles, because obviously you're around shelters, you're around animals. So I didn't know if you had heard about that or had any
Oh
opinion
yeah,
about that.
yeah. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps. I mean, compassion fatigue it's real. It's a thing. And it sounds crazy, right? Like, how does that fatigue you? Like, I go to counseling every week just because I'm so connected to the people I work with that it's hard, and I can't burn out. Like I feel like um veterinarians, man. I mean, think about like you go to school because you're going to like work with animals and save animals. And then when you come down to do it, everybody just for some reason thinks they need to wake up every day and do it for free or get completely shit on. But my guess is these people, and I know a lot of these people, get paid to go to work. But for some reason, everyone just feels like, even though the option is out there for you for pet insurance, for a crisis. I mean, we've worked, we just had a dog who swallowed her collar. Piper, one of our service dogs in training, her person took her collar off before she put her in the crate. And when the dog was out of the crate, found her collar, created the worst obstructional, the worst obstruction that they had ever seen. And Dr. Gavin took care of her, and it cost us $11,000. And what made me feel so bad about that was Dr. Gavin apologizing to me for it being expensive. And I was like, we are just so grateful that you have the skill set to save her. So
I think we're going to find, and I think we're finding the more that we go on through this, that we're going to find skill sets literally disappearing because we don't have the backup.
Because of a lack of gratitude.
Yeah, well, a lack of gratitude, a lack of education, a lack of a lot of things, a lack of true knowledge, a lack of willing to do things to help rather than serve yourself. Yeah, there's a lot of reasons for that.
What really made me feel bad was when she apologized to me, and it's like, what? We're just so, you say there's no like, what price do you put on Piper on this dog? Like there's no price tag I can give her for what she gives to April, just for mobility and just for, to help her socialize and get out there. And it's like, the dog was just had a dingbat moment and made a very bad decision, ate her collar, so it's like, but that to me made me feel sad for Dr. Gavin, that she felt like she had to apologize for charging for what she does, so I just, veterinarians, it's just it's a tough gig. And the animal field is tough.
The compassion fatigue. I work in, I'm a peer specialist now. So I work with people transitioning out of the hospital and back in the community. And there's a lot of that. And then between that and this, like we've had some really heavy conversations, and it's starting starting to wear a little bit. The wear
Yeah.
and tear is visible for sure.
Yeah. 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 And it's hard when you do, because like, you take on the characteristics of the people you spend the most time with,
Yeah,
right? And then when you're
absolutely.
in
Yeah,
the
that.
mental health field and you're spending the most time and,
Well,
like,
as a peer, you have your own mental health stuff. So
sure,
it's like you got that, then you got all the other stuff that you've got responsibilities, and then you've got your job, and then you've also got, there's a kind of a correlation between what you were talking about with veterinarians apologizing for charging you so much, but it's kind of that weird thing as a peer, like I'm getting paid to help people, but I help people in a way that they may not necessarily be able to help themselves all the time. So it's like this weird thing of being paid for something that you do for free anyway. You do for
right.
free. And that, just
Yeah.
like being a musician, it's just like being anything that you passionately follow, I think, too, that you would do it for free. And unfortunately, in 2023, where we don't value anything because everything is so in your face all the time, because there's no value of anything anymore. So it's like that's why we have that. And it's like, and then we have this dichotomy of, okay, where do I fit in, and how do I take care of myself and still take care of others and not have that be a thing in between us
I
too.
gotta, the best advice my therapist has given me to date, and there are some weeks where I just go and just have a normal conversation with her. One, like I said, I try to be very connected to the people I work with, and so when I'm with their energy all the time, I need a sounding board. But I also don't ever want to ask anybody in my program to do something I'm not willing to do. So I can't be like, you need therapy and I don't. Everyone's had trauma. You don't escape it. You don't escape it, no matter what it is, whether it's big or little, or your parents sucked, or you saw a car accident, or whatever your drama is. You've had it. But what she told me was, because I'm like, look, I'm great at self-care. Like I walk 8 miles every day and I eat, a plant-based diet, and I love to read and I crochet. And she was like, Joni, if you do it all the time, it stops being like, it just becomes who you are. And you have to do something you like that you don't do all the time. And then it was like, so last fall, I went through like a very significant yarn pumpkin phase.
Awesome.
All right.
Yeah. Did you crochet a bunch of yarn pumpkins? Did you?
No, because I couldn't, because that was my normal.
Oh, okay.
I had to mix shit up, whipped out the glue gun, got a little crazy with the
Oh boy.
crafting. But it worked. It was so bananas. Like it really helped. I was like, wow, this is like, it really does help. So like, like just don't be afraid to do something dumb, like make a yarn pumpkin. Like it was so dumb. And I'm not a yarn pumpkin girl. Like if you ever meet me in person, you'd be like, really, Joni?
Well, I'm
What I mean?
judging. I'm only going by our screen time here, but you really don't possess that. You don't really possess that yarn pumpkin vibe to me, to be honest.
Right, but I think that's why it worked, because it was so like,
But I think that's why it's cool.
yes.
Because again, therapy isn't about therapy, and therapy can be anything that's beneficial, and creative therapy. That's the one thing, like, and Timmy and I think have figured this out too, because Timmy's obviously written a book, and Timmy was in a band, and then we're both podcasting, and I'm a musician, and like we do all these creative things. But the more creative we get, it's the other things that we get creative at that happen. Like you start to like to draw, even though your drawing suck to you. You know
Yes.
what I mean? It's just one of
Yes.
those things that's just beneficial.
Yeah.
Yeah, well said. That was awesome. So the last question is, if there was something that you would like to see done for mental health, or that you could do for mental health as a whole without any kind of restraint, what would it be?
Oh man.
Let it rip. Come on, give it to us.
I don't. I would really just like one giant database of what you can have access to. Like, oh, you know what I would like? Let's get rid of state licensing for therapy. Get rid of state licensing. Why don't you just get licensed as a therapist for the United States of America. And then if the therapists in New York don't have time for you, you go to see a therapist in Ohio. Who gives a shit? Get red state licensing is, I'm sorry, now I'm going to start swearing. But
No, that's all right. You can swear on this.
Let her rip, Joni. Let her rip. Get it out.
Yeah, that's bullshit. State licensing. That's what I would get rid of. State licensing would be my first thing. You should be able to see there is a therapist somewhere in some Middle Earth state that has time for you. And then you have
maybe
right?
not. I don't know if that's true right now, because
yeah,
there's a lack of, first of all, there's a lack of professionals available, which is part of the problem of why you're seeing the issues that you're having, is that there's a lack of professionals available to everybody. And when you go to some of these new professionals, a lot of these newer professionals, you're talking to somebody who doesn't even have the experience in your life that you have. Right. Now, I'm not saying you can't learn something from them or get something from them, because you can, but it does make it difficult to connect on some levels. But there is a true lack of professionals right now. And I love that you want to get rid of state licensing, because I really do think my personal pet peeve now, as someone who is coming to this later in life, but has lived his whole life to do this work, because this has been my whole life, because I grew up with a mentally ill parent and an alcoholic parent. I've run the gamut of all that. So I was geared for this, but I didn't want to do this in my 20s because it was just too much for me to handle. And now that I've come to this later, going back to school, it's like, I wish there was like a trade school for therapists, because like we've thought about the education system all wrong in the first place and created all these barriers, just like we have for everything else. And then we see what we're lacking. And now we're lacking it in professionals. They talk about it every day, where we're lacking nurses, we're lacking doctors. People are dying on the operation table more because we don't have qualified people. We don't have qualified people to pass on the knowledge, because the people that are burned out don't want to deal with a bunch of attitudes from younger people that think they know everything already because they watch some fucking YouTube videos, because you have that too. You do have a lot. You just have so much. There's just so much bullshit involved. And it's just, sorry.
No, I think you're both right.
Free the demons.
Yeah, free the demons.
We call it drive-through dog training. The TikTok dog
drive-through
training.
Drive-through dog training. I like it. Drive-through therapy. Hey, but maybe that's what we need, though. Maybe in this TikTok world, maybe that's what we need, is drive-through therapy.
I don't
know. That'll feed it. That'll feed it. We don't need that shit.
Yeah, I think I think there's some benefit to being paired with someone who has different experiences than you. Like when I picked my therapist, I intentionally picked African-American woman from downstate, because I wanted a different perspective on life. I don't need to speak to another middle-aged white woman about the problems of the world. Like I wanted somebody outside of my box.
I love that.
Who was a civilian. She's a civilian. She has no affiliations with the military community. But I don't want, like, we can get in the cycle of over validating each other. And then there's that social contagion where we're all just, because we all have the same shared. So don't be afraid to connect with someone who has no idea what your life is like, because it doesn't, we got to get out of that. Like you're going to therapy to get out of that headspace. So yes, we need it because it does help. Like I have a very tight group of friends at Operation at Ease. We all work together, but we're all friends. And it helps that we all have shared experiences. But, like Terry and I have very similar shared experiences. And then Jessica is kind of like our, I don't know, she's like Galinda the Good Witch from like the Wizard of Oz. Like she's just very like tulle and rainbows and like, which we are not like a rainbow. Like I'm very like crass and I'm very like kind of dark and I'm a wicked dirty comic if you boys want to catch me on a different venue, but like then we have Jessica.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
Then we have Jessica that just puts glitter all over us, and it kind of balances us out, and then I have like Danielle.
You got to have a unicorn.
Yeah. And then it's like fun that I have like, we have Danielle who was also raised by like a crazy Italian family. And we have that connection, but it's nice that we have to get outside of it, because you just don't want to get in the rabbit hole with everybody, so I would say get rid of state licensing. It's bullshit. It's cop out. It's just states trying to like put some control over it. I think that we would have more therapists if they were able to do their job, and they aren't able to do it if you're limited to, lower income states where people aren't able to access what you're offering. Like, why are you going to become a therapist in like, I don't even know. I don't want to point out one state that has a lower income or education level, but why would you become a therapist there if you don't think anyone would utilize you? But maybe you would if like you could get people from LA and Boston and New York where there's money. What is it? Why does it matter? What do people in different states have different mental health needs?
No, it's what you said. It's about control and money. That's all it's about. Because if you probably have to pay to have your state license, and then you probably have to get it renewed every 5 years, so it's all about money. That's all it is. It's people can't allocate, and people think that they know what's best for others. That's really what it boils down.
As a therapist, you have to have insurance also.
Yes.
So it's like there's a lot of factors that play into it. Plus, nobody knows how much fucking paperwork actually goes into getting billing. That's the other part of this too, is that we're not talking about the insurance stuff, but we don't have even close enough time to get into that, nor the knowledge to get into that, because that's a whole other conundrum that makes things difficult.
But Joni, I like your answer. We have never heard that before, and I think Will and I both agree that is that's a good one. Yeah, never heard that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Joni. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks
it has been a pleasure meeting you. We will share everything in the show notes. Don't forget www.operationatease.org. If you are a vet, active military, or first responder, please reach out to Joni and her organization. I'm going to spread the message. I'm sure Timmy will too. Timmy, another great interview, man. Another great Sunday morning.
Absolutely. Just thank you for what you do, and thank you for your team. Thank you for being here.
Yeah,
for sure.
Thank you guys.
You got it. Until next week, get well.
Be safe.
Stay
above.
Thank you for giving us a listen. New episodes every Wednesday. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, you can share, rate, review, and even subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. Other ways to support the show: follow us on social media, share the content, share our episodes. You can also buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/abovegroundpod. For further concerns, show ideas, or just to say hi, you can email us at abovegroundpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, thank you for listening and supporting mental health. Keep the conversation going and stay above.